Eskom will start implementing load shedding from this hour following over 10 months of no rotational power cuts.
Minister of Electricity and Energy Dr. Kgosientsho Ramokgopa says the power cuts are being implemented in order to allow the utility to replenish its emergency reserves.
Earlier, Ramokgopa and Eskom Executives held a press briefing to update and on the status of South Africa's electricity generation performance.
Now, Ramokgopa has assured residents that Eskom is within touching distance of no load shedding.
He also says the power utility is on the right track to reducing capacity losses.
At the same time, Eskom Group Chief Executive Den Marokane added that this weekend's load shedding is a potentially temporary setback.
He also says load shedding is largely behind us due to the structural improvements in the generation fleet.
We have come to a situation where load shedding is an extraordinary occurrence. We've moved from a situation where when we don't have load shedding, it's an anomaly. I'm sure everyone can accept that it's an extraordinary occurrence, and we really want to put it behind us. So as a result of all of these things, the team we will be initiating stage 3 load shedding, at least over the weekend, and then go back to conditions of what now we have come to call normality. But Mr. Marokane and Mr. Numalo will share with the details with you. But I thought that it is important that we occasion this opportunity and share with you candidly, frankly, the state of the grid and the kind of interventions that we are making.
All right, let's stay with this conversation now and speak to Professor Vally Padayachee, power and energy expert and a former executive manager of Eskom, as well as a former senior executive of City Power in Johannesburg. Good evening to you, Mr. Vally Padayachee. Thank you so much for your time. Certainly lots to talk about. I'm not sure if you managed to catch that briefing by Eskom. So after 10 months, right, of no load shedding, we were bragging as South Africa at Davos that this is a problem that is behind us. The president saying that it was a better meeting than it was, in the past, given the generational challenges. But Eskom is saying that this has nothing to do with any other thing, but it's an operational matter. Your reaction?
Good evening, Bongiwe, to you and your listeners. Actually, it's a very good morning to you from. Well, I'm speaking to you from Melbourne, Australia. It's 2 o'clock in the morning here. So
thank you for staying up for us.
No, one of my favorite stations, as I said. Yes, I think the last 2 days have been very eventful. I mean, we had the NESA announcement yesterday, and today we had, well, kind of a bombshell news, and both with a common factor there, and it's Eskom. Now, although I say it's bombshell, I'm not surprised because Eskom and the ministry, and I've been saying this a number of times in the media, that Eskom had always said that they were not out of the woods yet, and they could always return to load shedding. And so I think it's come to a fruition now. But I was surprised that they jumped to stages 1, 2, and up to 3 for this weekend.
And we hear from them, right? And right on that point, the minister says that Eskom was hit by what he calls the perfect storm, which includes, in part, units that are out for planned maintenance, 6 units at key power stations breaking down, other units delaying to come back online. How much of a problem is Eskom in right now when it comes to these issues?
Yes, it is definitely a perfect storm, and there are a few factors, but the main factor is that, as they've alluded to, the 2 main high-performing power stations, Matumba and Letabo, and I know Letabo well. I used to manage the station when I was engineering manager there. Both those stations, a number of units had come off on the brink, and as you've alluded to in your intro, a number of those units had come out because of tube leaks. And tube leaks is one of the biggest nightmares for any power station manager in a power station, because you can do as much as you can and it will get you at the time when you least expect it, although you've got to do proper maintenance.
So how much?
So that's the one. The other,
Pardon me.
That's going to finish the other point. The other point is, I think they could have load shed last week. And why I'm saying that is that by their admission, they've outrun the emergency infrastructure, the equipment, mainly OCGTs and the pump storage. So when they say they outran, if we want a better word, the OCGTs, it means that they've exhausted the use of diesel at Anchorage especially. And so there obviously was firing the OCGTs at a high load factor last week, and now they run out of diesel, and hence they need to replenish this weekend. And same with the pump storage dams. They run out of water, so they're using the weekend when the demand is low to replenish. Otherwise, next week will be load shedding again. Hopefully not.
And I'm going to probe you on just that point, Vally, but I do understand that Chris Yelland, another energy expert, is also joining us for this conversation. Chris, good afternoon to you. Thank you so much for your time. We thought load shedding was behind us, as we heard Davos when the president was saying that it was a better meeting than it had been in previous years, given the fact that they did have to field some difficult questions in the past of not having power. But now, barely 2 weeks into it, we are back. Rolling blackouts, your reaction?
Yeah, look, the minister has made a point that he cannot say that load shedding is over. And I don't think anybody can say with any certainty that we're going to have load shedding or we're not going to have load shedding, or if we have load shedding, it's going to be load shedding in stage 1 or whatever. The point is that breakdowns of this nature are unplanned. They cannot be easily predicted, and there can be random events, and it can be that a number of events happen in quick succession. What really does surprise me, though, is that, Eskom has had 10 months, grace. And I would have thought that perhaps during this 10 months, some effort could be put into extending or increasing the storage facilities, the diesel storage facilities, at the open cycle gas turbines. Remember, these were never designed for extended use. They are peaking plants. They were intended to run for maybe half an hour a day. But they're being run, extensively due to energy shortages, due to lack of availability for the last week. And they've run out of diesel. Of course, the storage is not there for extended period. It is only there for limited use, at a low load factor. But it amazes me that we haven't spent a little bit of money, and they can't be that expensive, to extend the storage facilities so that in case of emergency like this, they can run longer without having to replenish their tanks. And that's the situation that it seems to be at the moment.
And Chris, listening to Eskom, they say that a unit doesn't take long to repair once it trips. And how long does it normally take to get it back online?
Well, it's not. There's no rule about this. It depends on the nature of the outage, or why it trips. Some trips you can almost restart almost immediately, depending on what it was that caused the trip. But in the case that was referred to by the minister today at the Timber and the Letaba station, which each had 3 units taken out of service, these are boiler tube leaks. Well, boiler tube leaks can take some days to fix. So these are not necessarily extended shutdowns, but there are some faults. I mean, you look at that explosion, the hydrogen explosion at the Medupi power station, unit number 4. That has taken a unit down for 3 years, even longer, 3.5, 4 years. So it all depends on the nature of what caused it to trip out or to be out of service.
Vally, when you listen to the power utility, right, they talk about the risk, saying that the risk is in an event that if they cannot recover as quickly as they've planned, then we can have more units possibly going offline, or we may have load shedding for extra days. How real is this threat?
Well, that's very real, because by the nature of the challenge we're in now, these units is taking longer than expected. They're doing their best effort. But maybe just to clarify one point I just mentioned there, it's not a diesel storage problem at Anchor Lake. It's actually a diesel logistics problem. And Eskom is not wanting to spend more money on storage because they want to convert that to gas. Just want to get that out of the way. But by the nature of the beast, if you have too many units coming off the grid, and these are big units, 600 megawatts, 800 megawatts, it means that you have more megawatts that's taken off the system. So the quicker that you can get these units repaired, quicker but properly maintained, it all goes well. Now, the case in point is that according to the group executive generation, the 5 units, outstanding units in the Timber and the Turbo, is expected to come back this weekend. These are big units. These are 600 megawatts, so that's about 3,000, 5 times 6 yards, 3,000 megawatts. If you don't get 3,000 megawatts or part of it back this weekend, and you have units coming back offline next week, which can happen because we've got old units, the load shedding could persist, and it could go beyond stage 3. I mean, Eskom was expected to go to stage 4.
And for you, Chris, you know, when you look at the fact that Vally was raising this point earlier on that he was surprised that we quickly jumped to stage 3, he would have expected stage 1 and 2. Did that catch you by surprise? And does it tell you there's a bit much more going on as we listen then to that briefing earlier on?
Yeah, I just want to respond firstly to Vally. Yes, those things have been planned to convert to gas. For the last 10 years, they've been planning that. The problem is there is no gas import infrastructure in South Africa yet. It'll cost much more to install gas infrastructure for imported liquefied natural gas to supply Ankalas or Sarikwa than it will to build some extra storage tanks for diesel. So really, I'm amazed that in the last 10 years, we haven't actually built some extra storage tanks to cater for this kind of emergency. In terms of the fact that we've jumped to stage 3 load shedding, yes, I think it's caught everybody by surprise. But it's not common to have 6 units, shut down simultaneously. If you just take an average of these are 600 megawatt units, 6 times 6 is 3,000 megawatts, 3,600 megawatts. So yes, it is very surprising that 3,600 megawatts should suddenly be offline, resulting in this kind of extensive diesel usage during the working day. During these things are intended for peaking, not for continuous use during the working day. And that's why they run out of diesel, and that's why we need extra storage facilities.
And Chris, before I go back to Vally, there's also, of course, the issue of the tariff that has now been approved, that price hike that has been approved for Eskom. A number of people on social media also talking about this to say that just after this is approved and then this happens, and it seems to then have also led to some anger as well, because a number of people have been talking about the fact that electricity is still unaffordable, and the minister has been saying they're going to be looking at ways in order to do this. But then if you are now not even going to have electricity once again, it further adds to the wound, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think the timing has been very unfortunate, obviously. The fact that this has happened within a day or two after Eskom had an adverse decision against it. Instead of getting 36% increase, it only got 12.7% increase. People then get involved in all kinds of conspiracy theories and loose talk that this is somehow, Eskom sending a message to the regulator and to the public that if you don't give us the price increase, this is what happens. I don't believe that kind of conspiracy. I believe that the system operator who decides to call for load shedding is independent of influence by politics and by management that want to interfere. And I believe that the system operator operates with integrity and independently to run the power system as best it can. But it is an unfortunate situation that this has occurred at this time because it leads to all kinds of loose talk and suspicion, and there's a lot of distrust between Eskom and the public.
And so what happens now, Vally, when it comes to, this issue of making sure that the reserves are sufficiently maintained? Because a lot of people are really, really uneasy about the fact that there is that real threat that we may see load shedding again next week.
Yeah. In fact, the process of beefing up the reserves on the weekend, as happened 21, 22, and 2023. If you recall, a number of weekends, Eskom had done that. And that was done because we had a number of units offline during the course of the week. Now, if that continues, then Eskom would be forced to use pump storage and open cycle gas turbines to keep the grid stable. But if the units continue to come offline, which I don't think will be will get into that regime, then we will avoid this. But this is a perfectly routine exercise where you beef up the water levels and you replenish your diesel stocks over the weekend.
But do you think it can just take just this weekend, Vally, or do you think that we may be in a lot more trouble?
No, well, as I mentioned earlier on, if we get the 5 units back by Sunday, we should be okay. And then, of course, to replenish the dams, the pump storage dam in Gula, Drakensberg, and Enkelek and Gorica, that shouldn't be an hassle. Except, as Eskom has made, that the logistics of getting into that Enkelek area is still problematic. So you can see that the combination of issues there that needs to be resolved. Otherwise, we can continue with load shedding beyond Monday morning.
Chris, what do you think?
Well, look, there is perhaps one thing that needs to be considered, and that is the availability of diesel in South Africa to replenish the tanks at Sarikwa and Ankerlach. Now, I don't know exactly what is stored, what storage there is of diesel outside of the Eskom tanks. The Eskom tanks are running dry. But the question is, and it has happened in the past, that South Africa is waiting for the next shipment of diesel because the refineries in South Africa are running, most of them are not even operating. And so most of the diesel in South Africa is actually imported. And that means it comes in by ship. And if South Africa's, stocks at Petro SA and the various storage facilities are running low, as they have done in the past when there has been extensive use of diesel, then there's no diesel in South Africa to fill the Eskom's tanks. That's why I say there's a need for additional storage capacity by Eskom on site at Sarikwa and Ankerlach just to deal with this very kind of emergency.
All right, let me thank you both for your time. Appreciate it. That was Professor Vally Padayachee, the power and energy expert and former executive manager of Eskom and a former senior executive at City Power in Johannesburg, all the way from Melbourne, speaking to us this evening, as well as energy expert Chris Yelland. Let's give you a recap, right, of what was said in that briefing earlier when it comes to the situation. We are now stage 3 load shedding. It started at 5 p.m. today. It's going to last throughout the weekend. This is to allow Eskom to refill its emergency generation reserves for next week. That's what we got from that briefing a little earlier on. And remember, stage 3 allows for up to 3,000 megawatts of the national load to be shared. So you can then look at around 3,000 of the megawatts that are going to then be, shared on the national load, as well as the causes, as you heard there, the minister describing these as the perfect storm: multiple unplanned breakdowns, continued plant maintenance, outages at 2 of its best performing coal-fired power stations, that's Letabo and Matimba. You heard Eskom saying that they're not going to be compromising on this very important issue of maintenance. And then this comes just after NERSA approved that tariff hike. So quite a lot to talk about when it comes to this particular issue. And Eskom saying that it needs to ensure that its reserves are sufficiently maintained. So we'll continue then to monitor the story and see if it goes beyond the weekend.